Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Yoga in Chatham, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Makeover Monday. Makeover Monday is the day of the week, the first day of the week, and therefore Sunday is really the first day of the week, but Monday to me has always been the first day of the week. It's a day we get to reflect on who we want to be this week. If we didn't live up to our expectations of ourselves last week, we're like, you know what? It's a new week. Let's start over. So it's our chance to get back on track with our health, with our spiritual focus, with our, what else? Come on, Mara, look alive here. We're on a podcast here.
There goes a chain.
Sleep is always one for people.
Sleep? Catch up with your sleep? Oh my God. You gotta make us. Oh, you mean like less sleep or more sleep? You need more.
Yeah, some people need to adjust their sleep routines, like go to bed earlier.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's a common one.
Is Mara too quiet or am I too loud? What's the feed?
You're too loud, Mare's too quiet.
Okay.
Move the mic over towards Mare.
I can't see anything. How are you, Kaustubha?
Yeah, you move the mic over towards Mare and we may get a more even sound.
The train's also coming right now.
That doesn't make any difference. Okay.
It affects how I move things.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. We have live on Zoom. We have about, I don't know. We got how much do we got here? We've got 97 people on Zoom. We have a little Zoom party. You're welcome to join. Email Mara, our senior executive director producer, at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Kaustubha, anything enlightening to share before we dive into this?
No, I'm tired. I'm not trying. I don't have anything right yet. It's going to have to come from the pages, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to develop our inspiration from the pages.
Yeah. I'm empty right now. I need to get filled up this morning.
Yeah, sometimes I wake up and I was like, I have nothing to offer anybody. I can't believe I have to do this. I can't. I need people to pour stuff in my cup.
You're locked in.
Today's not that day. Okay, so we are in a beautiful place in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Canto 2. Chapter 7 text.
33? Is that
33.
right, Kaustubha?
I think so, yeah, 33.
And Mare has a new job of being our announcing what number podcast this is.
Oh, yeah. Today is episode 283.
Okay.
283. Okay. That's pretty good.
It's impressive you guys do this every day.
That's impressive. Okay.
Now that we're just done patting ourselves on the back. Why don't we start?
We're good. We're good people.
Okay.
I give myself enough hell. Every now and then I could say I'm doing good. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jaya mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Srila Vyasadeva, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, almost all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, whose praise with transcendental songs will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyanat Murandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I really have to give a shout out.
Irrevocable. You said irrevocable.
Irrevocable.
Tony
I
the
love
Tiger
saying
or
that
something
word.
like that.
I really have to give a shout out to all the people who listen on a regular basis. It's very, very impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
They listen. They're just like focused. They're like locked in to the Bhagavatam. And
See what you're doing. You're flipping. You're flipping. You're patting yourself on the back earlier for doing the show.
I gotta start appreciating other people more.
If
that's my one takeaway from today. That's a big one. I got to learn to appreciate people instead of expecting everything from them. You know, Lori Pag, I can't see you so well. You should have more light in your room there. Come on, everyone's going to see on Zoom. I'm just kidding. Instead of expecting stuff from Lori Pag, this was our old one. Trading my expectations for appreciations. I've been living in expectations of everyone. Where can I just appreciate people, appreciate what they have to give? And instead, I'm living in a world of expectations where no one's living up to my expectations. What a miserable existence that is. That's going to be my theme today. Appreciate people instead of expecting stuff from them.
That's your Makeover Monday thing?
That's my Makeover Monday. And you know what? That is a game changer. That's a game changer. That's a whole life changer.
All right.
All right. So, and we had a great, I'm not going to get into it, but we had a great interview yesterday with, if you didn't hear yesterday's interview with Sachinandana Swami, so good. So good.
I had a nice conversation with him after.
You had a nice conversation with him afterwards?
Yeah.
Kaustubha, he always says stuff like that. I get a little jealous. I did? What did he talk about? Did he talk about me?
He did. He appreciated you. He did.
Okay. Text 34 and 35.
33.
33. When the Lord was engaged in his
by the way,
path.
hold it. I got to mention something. That, when we, yesterday was the interview and the day before that was questions and answers. So we're picking up where we left off on Friday. And Friday, we never even actually got to reading the verse. We went off course. We just started talking. And,
Yes.
And we never got to the subject, which was demonic, aliens flying in spaceships, destroying universes and stuff like that. That's coming.
Well, here we are, and here we are.
That's coming up today. So
All
this day is for you. If you're feeling empty today, well, this is a Krishna miracle because Krishna gave you exactly what you love.
This is what I need.
This is what you
When the
need.
Lord was engaged in his pastimes of the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavan, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. You never hear that word, sexual desires. You always hear conjugal love, which as a brahmachari, I was like, oh, conjugal love. That sounds nice. I never quite understood what it meant.
Well, sexual desire is even more specific, right?
Yeah. Well, no, conjugal love is...
Conjugal love means the love, the romantic love, but sexual desire is within conjugal love.
Okay. Enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by sweet and melodious songs, a demon named Shankachuda, a rich follower of the demigod of heaven, the treasurer of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. Did you know, you want to hear interesting Krishna trivia?
Okay.
This became Krishna's conch shell. Shankachuda.
What became the conch shell now? Tell me again.
His head.
How did that happen?
I don't know, but I think this
Okay.
is true. This is Krishna's conch shell.
Well, his name is Shankar.
Shanka. But I guess Shanka just means conch. Am I wrong here? All right, I got to research that. That's how I was thinking all these years. That became Krishna's conch shell. But Shanka just means conch. All the demoniac personalities like Pralamba, Danika, Baka, Keshi, Arista, Chanura, Mustika, Kuvalayapede elephant.
He's an elephant.
He's an elephant. Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura, Pondraka, great marshals like Shalva, Dvivida Monkey, and Balvala and Kikeya would all fight vigorously.
Skipped a line.
I skipped the whole line.
Balvala.
I'm sorry. Dantavakra, the seven bulls, Sambara, Vidurath, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboj, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kakeya. They would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly, or with him under his names of Baladev, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons, thus being killed, would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. Just sharing that these demons, they were somehow not ordinary beings. They also had some great blessing to be born to be killed by Krishna. They weren't full bhaktas, but they had they were some type of yogis or mystics in a previous birth often, and they would take birth to be killed by Krishna, and in that they would attain a liberation. Now, if you just hear about Krishna killing people, it sounds like Krishna is just doing wholesale slaughter of other beings, but all these people are actually great yogis, and they have some interesting backstory how they got to this place.
And according to this verse, they're achieving one or another level of liberation through being killed by Krishna. Being
killed by Krishna, or they had made that nice point, or by Krishna's, what was the word they used? Lord Hari directly with him, or under his names, under different names. So Baladev, in one sense, is also Lord Hari. But then they said Arjuna and Bhima, who are like his pure devotees, and therefore they're getting liberated in that.
And they were because people that were killed by them were killed in Krishna's presence, and they achieved that same kind of liberation.
The Lord himself in his incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for less intelligent persons with short life, and thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches according to the circumstances of this particular age. So you have a bunch of wisdom, and then you realize there's different people out there, so they're going to have to hear it differently. It's a pretty smart way to go.
You got to do it that way.
Yeah.
Now here's the verse, Raghunath. Get ready. This is for you.
When the atheists, that's my verse, the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets, prepared by great scientist Maya. The Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha, and will preach on sub-religious principles.
What do you
Lot
make
to
of
pick
that?
apart in this one.
There's a lot to pick apart. But let's get this conversation started. If we go back to the text, I think it was 33. Yeah, text 33. In the commentary to that, I just want to read one little part, just one point that's being made. And this answers a question that I brought up, like I think it was last week or maybe even the week before. Because remember when I brought up the idea of like, well, here's Brahma speaking to his son Narada about all these different incarnations. But by the time many of them appear, Narada's already a self-realized being. Narada's, why would he have the questions that he was asking? He already knows so much of this stuff. You understand?
Yeah.
Did I explain that right? So in other words, like Narada was saying, "Are you God?" To Brahma, and by the time some of these incarnations appear, Narada knows all this. So I was saying, is he speaking about things that are happening in the future? And that's that this Prabhupada addresses that in the commentary to 2733. He says, we should carefully note that the statements described herein are the statements of Brahmaji to Narada, and he was speaking to Narada of events that would happen in the future during the advent of Lord Krishna. The pastimes of the Lord are known to the experts who are able to see past, present, and future. What's that called?
Trikalagyan.
That's right.
Trikalagyan. I should have
They have
passed
knowledge
that one
of
to Mara.
three different phases of time.
It's a pretty interesting little mystic city to have.
Yeah, and
you
it
can
says that,
see someone and understand their future. You can see someone and understand their past.
so and it said that Brahma was one of those people, and he foretold what would happen in the future. Okay. So now when we hear about this Brahma or hear about this Buddha, we can read this commentary too to text 37, and we will find, even text 36. We could go back to, this is text 36. No, we could, okay, in
37.
Okay, let's go back to 36. Oh, that's what I was just reading the commentary to that. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm so spaced. I told you, I'm tired. I'm really out of it today.
Well, you know what? You're allowed. You're allowed to be out of it one day of the year.
I'm just sharing that. But okay. So here's text 37. And now the point is that this Buddha is not the same Buddha that we normally talk about.
It's a different Buddha?
Yeah, the Buddha that we normally talk about was a Buddha in our past, but in Brahma's future at this point, right? It would have been like way in the future, and just a little bit in our past although it was like, I think we say Buddha appeared, I forget the date. But here's what Prabhupada writes. He says, this incarnation...
let me jump in here a sec. There's probably different Buddhas that appear in different millenniums, in the same way Ram does his Leela in different millenniums.
Well, here we go.
Well,
he says, this incarnation of Lord Buddha is not the same Buddha incarnation as we have in the present history of mankind. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, very important Bhakti philosopher and saint, the Buddha incarnation mentioned in this verse appeared in a different Kali age. Okay.
Hard to believe that everybody went through all the same stuff that we're going through right now. It happened already.
It happens. Cycles. In the duration of the life of one Manu, there are more than 72 Kali Yugas. So there's 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, and for each Manu, there's 72 Kali Yugas. I mean, that means 72 Yuga cycles. It's just like time scale we just can't.
The time scale is so massive, and it makes you realize, like, what are my big problems today? They're insignificant.
They're tiny.
It's helpful. It's helpful to hear stuff like that and to see yourself in perspective of eternal time.
That's right. So now, Lord, he says that, and in one of those particular Kali Yugas, the particular type of Buddha mentioned here would appear. Lord Buddha incarnates at a time when people are most materialistic and preaches common sense religious principles. Like, that's Buddha's thing, right? So in this Kali Yuga,
common sense religious principles.
Yeah. So in this Kali Yuga, that had to do with particularly Ahimsa, that the animal killing was going on. So Buddha stepped forward and preached about Ahimsa.
It's a common sense. If I didn't grow up eating meat with my family, it would be common sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's common sense religious principle. You don't just kill everything and put it in your mouth. You don't let animals suffer like that. It's just a common sense religious principle. Makes sense.
Live and let live. Such ahimsa is not a religious principle itself, but it is an important quality for persons who are actually religious. And I think when Prabhupada says religious here, he's meaning yogic. He's meaning that a real connection with God takes place, like on a spiritual level. He's saying, like, that's what I think he's defining as religious here. And he's saying ahimsa is kind of just like something that anyone that's connecting with God already has, right?
Sure. By the way, Kaustubha,
yeah,
a lot of I want to hand it to a lot of our people on Makeover Monday. By the way, if you're new to this show, we do every Monday we do this makeover, and I was reading some of the people. Some of the people are just like, I want to give up meat. I want to give up meat eating. So they're new to this whole process, and they haven't given up eating meat, and it's pretty impressive. I want to say I'm impressed, and I want to acknowledge that people are still struggling with this thing, and I get it. We grew up, some of us are 30, 40, 50 years old. We've been eating meat our entire life, and all of a sudden, we have to let go of all these like foods that I've become attached to. Where I go to a baseball game, I want a hot dog, or I go, there's things that have anchors, like emotional anchors for us. And so to already give them up it's a very different. Then there's family gatherings, or my spouse. And now me and my spouse can't go to our favorite restaurant anymore. I just want to extend a big, for those who are trying to do this and struggling a little. I appreciate it so much.
Could you extend that again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case you didn't get the first one.
Okay.
But that's
It can be challenging according
can
to
be
how we've been
super
raised and
challenging.
the circumstances that we find. Like for you and I, we were teenagers and we didn't care what anybody. We were kind of just like our whole thing was just to do whatever we want. So it's like it
Yeah, that
wasn't.
was our thing. Do whatever we want. We don't care about anybody. We're going to do this.
We
And it was
didn't have
sometimes and a lot of ego mixed in with it.
and no family attachments or anything like that. We're just kind of on our own. And okay, this is what I'm going to do. But it can be complicated when people, in different circumstances that people find themselves in. It can be really challenging.
But I will say, if we really want to understand compassion
Yeah.
to other people,
Mm-hmm.
it's you start to become very sensitive to all beings when you start ethically saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. And not because not for health reasons or things like that. When you say, I'm ethically not going to do this anymore, it changes you in a deep way.
Yeah.
And we pray for compassion. Please help me, God. So it's training us to give what we also want. You think about that?
I'm with you. I think it's so important, Very well. Let's see what Prabhupada says about Ahimsa here. He says such Ahimsa is not a religious principle itself, but it is an important quality for persons who are actually religious, for real. It is a common sense religion because one is advised to do no harm to any other animal or living being, because such harmful actions are equally harmful to one who does the harm.
They're equal. Say that again. It's equally. What was that?
He says that such harmful actions are equally harmful to he who does the harm.
They're equally harmful to he who does the harm.
Yeah.
Now, Butcher, don't live or die. Remember that one?
Yeah, that's
Butcher, don't live, don't die. What a place to be, in a butcher shop, hanging out at a butcher shop, or dying after killing so many beings. Yeah. It must harden you a lot to have to slaughter like that. And all right, that's all I'm going to say. I had a thing.
Okay, but now he says, but before learning these principles, this is interesting, of nonviolence. But before learning these principles of nonviolence, one has to learn two other principles, namely to be humble and to be prideless. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and nonviolent. Think about that, right? Because sometimes we do get these kind of activists that are speaking out, let's say in the name of animal rights, but actually they have that, a similar kind of himsic.
No, they're just they're just nasty.
Attitude, yeah.
They're just nasty, and they're cultivating a nastiness. That's the beautiful thing about the Bhakti path. You will become cruelty-free in one sense, as much as you can be in this body. We're always going to be a little bit cruel because we subsist on other beings. But what will happen is, with that, you will get this softness of your heart that also changes. You don't have to independently go for these things. I've got to wipe out racism. I got to wipe out sexism. I got to wipe out this other nationalism. I've got to wipe out. You'll get it all. You're going to get it all, but you got to go right to the root. It's the actual fixing of the problem, because it changes how you treat people. It changes how you treat other beings. And all of a sudden, from you, your universe will change. You know why? You're a big part of the universe. And some people on the show have very, very big positions in this world. And some people have very small positions. Well, whatever it is, you're going to start to push in to your universe with your newfound appreciation for other people, appreciation of the dignity that we extend. I went through a humbling period, a humiliating period in my life where I was picked on in school, and I started picking back, and I sort of became it was just like there were sort of gangs of different ethnicities in school. And I was grew up like that, where sort of and I had no gang. I was just picked on. And therefore I started developing that racist type of vibe. And I got to a point where it's like, I'm not this person. It's not like this race is wrong. I think everybody's got to get to this point where it's not like this race is wrong. These guys are jerks. That doesn't mean everybody's jerk. Now, when we get that, when we start to get that, we started to see underneath a community that there's beings making individual choices. And you don't wipe out a whole community of people for their choices. Then with bhakti, you start to take that to the next level. There's a bigger community, and the community even extends outside the human species. It extends outside the animal species. And this is what I mean by getting to the roots. We can artificially say, yeah, we treat each other equally. But what does that mean? We're always going to favor some and not favor. We have to go right to the root of it. Or else it's going to be like, okay, we're all equal as humans anyway. And if we're like screaming for equal rights, you got to extend it. You got to extend it to all living beings, because every living being is just like you. If you look them in the eyes, if you look the plant in the eyes, I guess, you know what I mean? If you look them in the petals, and
Potato has eyes.
a potato has eyes. You look those potatoes right in the eyes, and you see that this is a struggling being, and therefore we minimize. And that's why this is a huge value, is we get rid of this concept of hate. Why? Hate is the real thing that's driving everybody, that's freaking out our world right now. It's this hate that we have, and we're seeing distinctions everywhere. But we go to that root of it. And what is the root? That everybody's a living being and they're struggling for existence. And therefore, this huge value that Buddha taught in this Yuga was stop violence, stop hurting people, treat people with the type of dignity, or beings with the type of dignity, and take it right off the human, not only the human platform, but the human platform and all living entities. And that is the next stage of trying to find some type of equilibrium, balance, and love in the world. Kaustubha?
Thank you, Raghunath. Thank you.
Something.
Okay. Now, what's coming to my mind here is that we're hearing these different verses, and it was just established by Srila Prabhupada in that commentary that Brahma was speaking about the future, right? Here we hear this description of a Buddha that we're otherwise unfamiliar with. Everything else we're going to read about Buddha is about the Buddha in this Yuga. But now we're hearing about a Buddha in another Yuga who's like dealing with like these atheists who are like flying around in spaceships, right? It's like, and in the previous verse, we heard him speaking about how Vyasadeva will edit and present the Vedas, which is also a future incident. So this again, it sounds like some kind of, folklore, science fiction maybe, right? Where someone can see the future. Now, how are we meant to understand that or accept that? Can you tell me? Is it that people can actually do this?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
There are beings, they have spaceships. I mean, it's one of those things.
I'm not even talking about the spaceships. I'm talking about seeing the future. How is that possible?
I think it's these, first of all, I've met people who can do this. I think Raghunath Swami can do it truthfully. I'm convinced Raghunath Swami has, this shouldn't be published out loud, but I'm between you and me, no one repeat this, but I'm convinced Raghunath Swami sees the future. He's said stuff to me that I just like, this man knows the future. He knows, or you're just like or people, I also know people that are like so smart, it's almost like they see 5 steps ahead or 10 steps ahead. That's another type of like deep intelligence. But yeah, they see the future, they see the past. I've met people who see the past. They're out there. That's a very common city to have. They can just, they look at you and they understand all about you. I do that with Mara. I'm looking at the screen on Zoom. I'm like, I know all about all of you guys.
Well, this is the point that I want to bring up, is that just what you said right now. Oh, I know this person. I think that they can see the future. And I've also met someone, I think they can see the past. A skeptic would not be very moved by that, right? A skeptic would say, you know what, somebody can say something.
Why don't the skeptics be skeptical of their own limitations?
Well,
why not that?
They have the right.
Why not be skeptical of that? How do you know you're not? Be skeptical that your brain doesn't know everything, that you can't shove everything into your rational mind. Why not be skeptical of that, Mr. Skeptic?
Okay, well, easy now. There's no need to get hostile. there's no need to get. But your point is, I accept your point. In other words, perhaps what we need to be skeptical of is how the expanse of our understanding or the expanse of our knowledge. Because I think that a skeptic might look at what you said and, in a sense, downgrade your understanding, like demean your understanding, right? Look at this guy. He's ignorant. He's saying that something's, if you took, you could do mathematical tests and show that this person that, because they predicted one thing doesn't mean that they can see the future, but he's got some psychological need to accept that this person can see the future, and therefore he's buying into it, but there's no scientific basis for it. And therefore I say he's on a lower level of understanding and I'm on a higher level of understanding, right? And then there's a little pride and arrogance that comes with that too.
That's why I say it's best to say, we don't know. These things could exist.
I just want to take this to the next level, because my point is this, is that, but if you dig deeper, that skeptic could find that there are people that they might be impressed by, right? Great scientists, thinkers that are beyond that person's, that their realm of knowledge goes beyond. And so then if you take a person like an Einstein, who he actually believed that past, present, and future exist simultaneously.
Einstein said that?
Yeah, and this has to do with his whole theory of relativity and all that.
And he was pretty smart, right?
Well, so my point is that here's a person that he knew science, but was open-minded. And he also knew of his own, like it was Einstein that famously said that, what was it that about, the more that I learn how little I know, something like that. Right?
All I know is I know so little, and that I know so well. How about that?
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
That was me. That was a shelter lyric. Come on, throw me a bone.
I'm sorry, I had no idea.
All I know is I know so little, and that I know so well.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, right? Einstein said, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. And so that's why, a skeptic, there's nothing wrong with skepticism, but there is something wrong with being skeptical about all that you don't know, right?
There you go. The more you learn, the more you realize I don't know anything.
And so and I'm no scientist, and it's really something I should look into, but from what I understand, quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity, they go into understanding how time can be multidimensional. And this is the point. It's like you take, we perceive 3 dimensions, right? Raghu's gone. He's gone. He's on this thread. I'm
How do you know? How can you tell? Maybe
so
you're
obvious.
that mystic.
It's so obvious. No, I can see. I can perceive it.
I can't help it. Jolly Lama is he's like a llama himself. So I wanted to read what his very important insight was.
So stay with me, because it's a topic that I don't know so much about. I need help with this. Okay.
Well, maybe I can help. I'm a physicist myself.
Well, no, but just helping us work it out. We perceive 3 dimensions, right? But there are scientists that are saying that there's a 4th or 5th or 6th dimension that we're not perceiving. Now, with two dimensions, we can determine certain things. Like, for instance, if you take Manhattan, which is laid out on a grid, and you said, I want to meet someone on the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue.
Sure, it's simple geometry.
Yeah, the streets run east to west, and the avenues run north to south. And so with the combination of those 2 dimensions, I should be able to find the person that I'm looking for at 42nd Street and 5th Avenue, right? I have all of the information that I need to find that person. I know where they lie on the X axis and where they lie on the Y axis, and I can go to that point where those 2 meet. 42nd Street is one, 5th Avenue is another. I go to that point. I should be able to find what exists there, correct?
Yeah.
But if you bring in a 3rd dimension, Like you say, this person's there, but they're actually on the 10th floor of a building that's on the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue. Well, without that third dimension, I will not be able to locate that person. I could be in my two-dimensional world
Sure.
and say this doesn't exist. Right? They
So you
said
start
this,
throwing in a fourth dimension and a fifth dimension that is like imperceptible by our ant-like senses. And then you have like, then anything's a possibility. That's, truthfully, that's why I don't get into this stuff.
Well, now hold on. So okay, I accept your point. So theoretically, there could be a fourth dimension. There could be a fifth dimension. But why should we accept that that's even a possibility when there's no evidence of it?
Because there's a lot of things that we can't perceive.
Well, this is my point, and this is where you and I, we should bring a physicist on here. We should bring Murli Gopal or someone like that on here and discuss this, right?
Okay, let's do that.
But what they say is like you take a shadow, right? Like say Raghunath is standing on the corner of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue, and the sun is raining down on him in all its glory, and there he is.
Let the sun come down on me. Don't let us. I only know about 4 words of every song out there. Okay, apologies for that. I just had to bleed that out.
So Raghunath is standing in the sun, and then from him, from his 3-dimensional form, he casts a 2-dimensional shadow, right? Okay, so he's 3-dimensional, but his shadow is 2-dimensional. But if one were to study the 2-dimensional shadow, it could tell us a lot about the existence of a third dimension, right?
Yeah.
If someone could just study your shadow, they could understand the reasonability of accepting a third dimension that's casting the shadow.
Here's another point to that analogy.
Okay, I hadn't completed.
You didn't finish the first point of it? Okay, I thought that was it. I was like, yes, you're a genius. You're the shadow analogy.
So the point is that what scientists are looking at, and that when they're studying, they're developing theories in quantum physics, is that our 3 dimensions are giving hints to a fourth dimension.
Our 3 dimensions are giving hints to a fourth dimension.
Just as the 2-dimensional shadow can give hints of a third dimension, what we perceive in in our 3-dimensional perception is giving hints to a fourth dimension, which sound like science fiction to people, but scientists, someone like Einstein was firmly convinced of the existence of a fourth dimension, and firmly convinced. Einstein was firmly convinced that time exists, past, present, and future exist simultaneously. And if that's a fact, if Einstein is correct, well,
I'm already dead.
But if Einstein is correct, then one could potentially perceive past and future if they could perceive the fourth dimension. You with me?
Yeah.
So this is my point, going back to the skeptic. They might be skeptical of what you were saying and seeing it as some kind of simplistic, faulty kind of thinking. And they would think that their skepticism is actually the truth and like the highest level of understanding. Right. But then there are other people that were as much or more developed in their scientific understanding, that had open minds, that understood their own limitation, that had a bit of humility, right? Like Einstein is saying that the more I learn, the more I know I don't understand. I know how little I know. So he was able to develop faith in something that not only is very far out, but this is where I'm trying to tie it all in, but that was spoken about thousands of years ago in a book called the Srimad-Bhagavatam, right? That when the Bhagavatam was composed, not Einstein didn't exist, theory of relativity didn't exist, quantum physics didn't exist, but it was talking about a being, namely Brahma, who was the engineer of the universe, who was well aware of all the different dimensions and had the ability to see past, present, and future at the same time. So I guess I'm sharing this just as something to take in through reasoning to give us the possibility to open up our imagination a little bit, open up our mind a little bit, understand just how small and insignificant we are. And that even though we hear something that's very far out in one of these books, to think, okay, maybe that could be possible, right? Great thinkers, great scientists of this world accept that similar things could be possible. So why not give it a chance? That's all.
I'm with you. And that's why it really goes to like, what do we know anyway? I mean, I'm sitting at the dinner table. My dog's right next to me. I'm eating. Everything's normal. And all of a sudden, his head pokes up. He's looking around. Roof, 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 roof. He hears something I can't hear. There are sounds that I can't hear. There are colors, right, that I see that the dog doesn't see.
There'd be dimensions.
There's different dimensions, and they're out there, and we know them anyway. And so the idea is, when we hear fantastic things, it's very easy to write it off as myth, as fantastic stories. Oh, primitive people created these things. And the Vedas themselves say, no, you don't understand. Things were a lot more sophisticated and are a lot more sophisticated. You guys are dull and you're arrogant. And in your dull arrogance, you think you've got it figured out. It's like living underneath a table. How much can you figure out living underneath a table? Here I am in the yoga studio, in the back room of the yoga studio, under the table. Tell me about the universe. No matter how much I look around underneath the table, all I can see is the table. You know, there's a different, I think it's the Bhagavatam astronomy. You know, there's different there's Jyotish, which is the Vedic astrology. We call it Vedic astrology. It's called Jyotish. And then there's this Bhagavatam astrology. I think I've got to ask one of my scientists.
Vedic cosmology.
Vedic cosmology. There's got to be a difference between. Anyway, one of them, our favorite physicist, Sadaputta Prabhu, Dr. Richard L. Thompson, he found the missing gap between these two versions, which came of viewing the universe. And I think for generations, everyone thought, well, the Bhagavatam teaches one type, and then Jyotish teaches a different type. I don't understand. How are they together? And he said one was a view from man. So man looking up has one vantage point of the universe, right? Mm-hmm. And another version is of the demigods looking down. And that's where you get this idea of a Jambu Dweep, right? These different islands. Because what are planets anyway? They're islands in space. If you're looking down at the planets.
It looks two-dimensional.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're from different vantage points. And we, with our arrogance, are sitting underneath the table in the back of a room, in the back of a building, in the tiny little countryside of New York State, and we're thinking we can figure out the universe? Come on!
Okay, now you mentioned Sariputta. I'm going to read a little Sariputta for you, okay?
You prepared with Sariputta? Look at that. I said Sariputta. He's got Sariputta.
I got it. You wanted Sariputta? I'm going to give you Sariputta.
Yeah, I recommend everybody take a little. It's Sweet Baby Krishna. I've been really holding back from reading anything else but Krishna Leela on my time off.
Well, we're going to read a little Sariputta because it helps you understand the Krishna Leela. All right? Why are you looking around like crazy? What's the matter?
There's just a weird, ghostly noise.
Okay, forget that. Nobody hears. Now, you ready?
Yeah.
This was kind of like this was from an article that he wrote called Time Travel and Consciousness. Is time travel possible? Both Einstein and the Vedic literature have an answer, by Sariputta Das.
Is time travel possible?
Yeah. So in 1898, H.G. Wells published his famous story of the time machine, a machine that would enable a human time traveler to visit any desired time in the past or future. We have no idea how this fictional machine might have worked, but people have spent a great deal of time and effort to see if traveling through time might actually be possible. It turns out that some forms of time travel were contemplated in the Puranic traditions of India, in the Bhagavatam, etc., and that empirical evidence pointing to possible time travel can be found both in modern physics and in the study of paranormal phenomena. So from both angles, right? What is time? Generally, we think of time as passing or flowing from past to future, we think that the future has not yet come to be and the past has ceased to exist. Only the present is real, and that reality shifts from moment to fleeting moment. So where can a time traveler go if only the present exists? Okay, with me, Raghu? Yeah, okay. Einstein's special theory of relativity. He had different theories, but the one called the special theory of relativity provides an answer to this question. To see how, consider a diagram in which space is represented by the x-axis and time is plotted on the vertical axis. So there's 2 dimensions, right? A horizontal line at the center level represents a given moment of time, with the future above the line and the past below the line. So time is moving like this on this line, right?
This is where in physics class I started writing notes to my friends.
Okay. So, but the point is that if you have 2 lines, they meet, there's only one point. And that one line is moving along the other line, and there's only one, they're only meeting at one point at any particular time. And as it moves on from one point to the next, the other one's gone. Okay. So he says a horizontal line at a certain level represents a given moment of time with the future above the line and the past below it. In Newtonian physics, if an observer moves uniformly relative to us, a moment of time for that observer is still represented by the horizontal line. But in the theory of relativity, a moment for a moving observer is represented by a tilted line that the party lies in our future and partially lies in, that partially lies in our future and partially lies in our past. This implies that our past and future must be real since they lie in the present of various moving observers. As Einstein put it when consoling the widow of a deceased friend, he said, "For us who are convinced physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion, however persistent." Okay, so now that may be a lot to grasp, but the point is he's saying that different observers can observe time from different angles and see past, present, and future at the same time. Now this gets really interesting to me, okay, is that he's saying that's one point that's like discussed in Bhakti. Like here's Brahma and he's seeing the future and he's describing it. And here's Einstein saying that that's actually a real thing, that could actually really be, right? Now, then paradoxes of time travel arise. For instance, he goes on, when we contemplate travel from the present to the past, we immediately run into paradoxes or contradictions. For example, there's the famous grandfather paradox. Of course, you're familiar with the grandfather paradox, Raghu?
No,
Okay.
I don't. Didn't take thorough notes on the grandfather paradox. Please explain it to me.
If a traveler,
refresh my memory.
It's similar to when you and your son went to the palm reader in Haridwar, and the palm reader said that in a previous life, you were your son's son. And then
Right.
your son said, "Does that mean that I was married to grandma?"
Yeah, that was what he called. That was not a palm reader. You see, these guys, they come in these they say, "I am a palm reader." They're not. They're like these tree Kalagyanis. They can understand past, present, and future. This guy knew the past.
Okay.
This guy cued in.
Well,
He
this
was
is similar
cued
to
in with
that.
the past.
He says, if a traveler goes back in time and kills his grandfather before the grandfather meets his grandmother, then the time traveler will never be born and therefore cannot kill his grandfather. So you have a paradox there, right? If I were to go back and kill my ancestors, then I would never be born.
Maybe
How is
there's
it possible
something
for
like
me
you
to even
just
go
couldn't
back?
kill him. Maybe you just couldn't kill him. What do we know about this? We don't know.
Well, there's a Einstein or at least Sariputta and Einstein, and maybe some other
Had a theory about it?
had a better explanation.
There's a Star Trek episode about this, isn't there?
I don't know. There's that famous there's that book by Ray Bradbury I read when I was a kid where you could
Martian Chronicles.
I don't remember. It was a short story about going back in time and you're not supposed to step off the path because any little change you can make, right?
Change the future.
Yeah. So in any case,
interesting stuff. You know, it's all interesting.
It's interesting. Well, if you find that interesting, then just listen to this, and you might find this interesting.
All right, go on.
One way to deal with such paradoxes is to introduce multiple universes into the picture. Suppose that when you go back to kill your grandfather, you kill him in a parallel universe that is nearly the same as this one, but contains a deceased grandfather rather than a living one. We can eliminate contradictions by allowing events altered by time travel to work themselves out in various parallel universes. This can be done in the context of the multiple worlds of Everett Wheeler Graham interpretation of quantum mechanics, in which the universe continually splits into multiple copies corresponding to the different possible outcomes of random quantum events. The quantum physicist David Deutsch developed a theory of time travel along these lines. Now, why am I bringing this up? Is because Bhagavatam also talks about parallel universes. The Bhagavatam is saying that from one divine being.
I'm convinced that dreams have something to do with these parallel universe.
Okay, but that's fine. I'm glad that you're convinced of that. But my point is this again, we have modern day quantum physicists talking about another thing, the next thing, multiple universes, right?
Yeah.
Which the Bhagavatam speaks of. You understand? So what I'm saying is that for a skeptic to just write it all off is actually not scientific at all, because there are scientists, well-established, important scientists that have developed, well-developed theories that
skeptics
speak to the possibility of these things being true. And these are books from many, many, many centuries ago speaking about these exact things. So let's at least open up a little bit and give it a try. That Brahma could speak to Narada about the future.
And we're not saying like, okay, accept it all. Believe it all. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying
expose yourself to it. Marinate in it.
Marinate. No, I'm not even saying marinate. I'm saying why not?
I'm saying marinate.
Kaustubha says marinate. I say why not? Why not? The demon's flying a rocket. Why not? The higher beings can know past, present, and future. Why not? And I think once you say why not, it blows the ceiling of possibility.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, these aren't even like you hear about these in other cults, other spiritual traditions. In the Bible, you hear about these things. You hear about higher beings with bugles. The Vedas just go into incredible detail about this stuff. How do they get around? They have a ship. We call it a rocket, but I'm sure it's other type. They're actually more sophisticated because they're just like we have people in this planet that are smarter than me at math. Then you meet that person, and there's someone smarter than him in math, and then there's someone that's smarter than her at math, and then is there somebody outside this planet that's smarter than them at it? And so that's where these higher planets are. They have higher intelligence. They're more sophisticated. They're higher. They play music better than anybody on this planet. They have more intelligence in all like cultural things. They're just refined. They can shape. Yeah, they could change. Why not? Why not? I'm not saying they do. I'm saying why not? And when you go into the universe, when you go into the Bhagavatam and you start hearing from this vantage point, then it's say, yeah, why not? What the hell do I know anyway? And I think that's where to go. And we're in this mediocre planet Earth. It's mediocre. Higher planets are interesting. Even the lower planets, they're sophisticated. The lower planets are very sophisticated. And they're problematic because they're not into like hierarchy, love, God, etc. They've got some like codes of how to run a society and stuff, but they've got no Lord Vishnu in their life. They're not interested in God, and therefore it's a loveless planetary systems, and it becomes hellish. Therefore, we have this word hell, or we call them. There's so many. There's Patala. What are the 7 lower planetary systems?
There's
Patala, Tala.
But before we go deep into hell, we've run out of time.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. I'm gonna start. Oh, by the way, everybody, we're doing Sweet Baby Krishna all month for Kartik. That's my Kartik vow. Tuesday and Thursday. join us for sweet little baby Krishna talks. You don't have to deal about all these aliens. But I'm gonna also
Aliens,
research my aliens.
shapeshifters, you got all kind of people in
Also,
this.
Claire Weatherly's teaching asana at 10 a.m. today.
Claire Weatherly from UK. She's good.
And there's a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 1 o'clock today.
Bhakti recovery group. We're trying to recover from the material world. The material world is enough to like, oh, I got to recover from this. It's like going to a party that's just like everything's a mess. Everyone's. I need to
Detox.
recover from that. Thanks everybody for joining us. We have 104 now. I'm sure a couple.
It was 112 earlier.
Oh, 112.
Yep.
You feel happier now? You were a little disappointed when it was like it stuck at 95.
You know what? If you're the 108th person, you get a prize. How about that? Mara will send you a prize. Thanks everybody for joining us. We've got a great week for a makeover. Post your Makeover Mondays. It's inspiring for me. When I see people just taking these, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're struggling with like, I can't stop eating meat, share that. Hey, today I'm going to try it this week. See how it goes. And those little steps make a difference, and no one's judging you. It's a very welcoming community we have here. Thanks for being part of it. If you want to, if you're one of the others out there listening on Apple Podcasts, you just got to email Mara. She'll send you the codes. There's nothing you have to do except email her, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.